They thought I'd spend Thanksgiving slaving over a feast for 30 people, alone. But when the guests arrived, all they found was a cold turkey, a frantic kitchen, and a single note I left behind, already thousands of feet in the air on a flight to freedom. The kitchen looked like a battlefield. Pots scattered across the counters, a half-frozen turkey sat on the sink like a forgotten soldier, and the scent of something burnt lingered in the air. Mark Bennett stood helpless in the middle of it all, his sleeves rolled up for the first time in years, staring at a recipe card upside down as though it were written in another language. Guests were already arriving in the living room, laughter and chatter drifting in while the hosts scrambled behind the closed kitchen door. His mother, Evelyn Bennett, barked orders louder than the clatter of pans, her pearls swinging as she leaned over the stove. "This is a disgrace," she hissed, flinging a wooden spoon into the sink. "Where is Claire? Where is she when we need her most?" The answer was simple, though Mark could not say it out loud. Claire wasn't here. She had boarded a plane hours earlier, leaving behind 32 hungry guests, an unfinished dinner, and years of unspoken resentment. And as the kitchen spiraled into chaos, the story of how they arrived at this moment began to unravel. 3 days earlier. "Family first, Claire. That's what we always say." The words had come from Evelyn, spoken sweetly, almost like a hymn, but Claire Bennett knew better. Behind that polished smile was an unyielding command. Family first never meant all family. It meant Evelyn's rules first, Evelyn's image first, Evelyn's approval first. That Tuesday morning, Claire was seated at the long mahogany dining table, a list of chores already spread in front of her. She adjusted her glasses and scanned the paper. 32 guests, 3 types of stuffing, 7 side dishes, 4 pies, all homemade. "Mom, this is excessive," Claire whispered, her voice careful, almost apologetic. Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "Thanksgiving is not a moment for mediocrity. People expect a certain standard from this family. From me." Mark, her husband, sat at the far end of the table, sipping coffee and scrolling on his phone. Without looking up, he offered, "Don't worry, I'll carve the turkey. And maybe open the wine." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's chest tightened. 32 guests, 10 dishes, and all he would do was carve. A wife, not a machine. Claire wasn't new to sacrifice. She had been making them since the day she married Mark 15 years ago. Her career as a graphic designer had been shelved the moment their children were born. The studio apartment she once decorated with her sketches was replaced by Evelyn's sprawling colonial house, where every wall carried portraits of the Bennett lineage, none of Claire. She had cooked, cleaned, smiled through dinners, swallowed insults disguised as jokes. She had done it all because she believed that if she gave enough, she would finally belong. But belonging in the Bennett family was an illusion. She remembered Evelyn's voice from the previous Thanksgiving. "Oh, Claire, you make such a wonderful helper. Honestly, what would Mark do without you?" The laughter that followed from the table wasn't kind. It was sharp, dismissive, almost cruel. This year, the seed of resentment grew faster. When Claire learned that Sophie Carter, Mark's cousin, had been uninvited because of her recent divorce, she felt a pang of recognition. "Divorced women bring bad luck," Evelyn had declared with a smile, as though it were etiquette rather than cruelty. Claire had pressed her lips together, realizing with a jolt that Evelyn only valued people who served her image. Sophie had been discarded the moment she didn't fit. And deep down, Claire knew. One day, she would be discarded too. Later that evening, as Claire carried grocery bags heavy enough to bruise her shoulders, a neighbor spotted her outside. "Big dinner?" the woman asked kindly. Claire forced a smile. 32 guests." The neighbor frowned. "All by yourself?" Claire nodded. The woman sighed, shaking her head. Honey, that's not help. That's watching someone drown while standing on the dock. The words hit Claire harder than the November wind. For the first time, someone had said aloud what she had always felt. The next morning, Mark was nowhere to be found. She spotted him on social media later, bright grin, golf club in hand, surrounded by friends. His caption read, "Thanksgiving tradition, can't break it." Her own tradition? Kneading dough until her hands cracked. Setting alarms at 3:30 a.m. so pies would cool in time. Measuring every spice to perfection so Evelyn could receive compliments from guests. By evening, her hands were raw, her back ached, and her spirit was thinner than the pie crust she rolled. And then Evelyn called. "Claire," she began, her voice brisk. "I just remembered. Timmy Sanders is allergic to nuts. You'll need to redo the stuffing and the pecan pie. We can't risk a lawsuit." A lawsuit. Not a child's safety. Not Claire's exhaustion. Only liability. Claire closed her eyes, clutching the phone. Something inside her cracked, silent but final, like a bone giving way under too much weight. That night, as she sat alone in the dark kitchen, flour still dusting her arms, Claire whispered to herself, "What if I just didn't?" The words hung in the air, daring, forbidden. She imagined 32 guests arriving to empty tables, Evelyn sputtering excuses, Mark fumbling in front of his friends. The thought terrified her. It also thrilled her. And that thrill, once tasted, could not be ignored. Before I go deeper into this story, let me pause here to invite you, our dear listener. Before we dive further into this dramatic tale, make sure you subscribe to Her Betrayal Stories and hit the notification bell. Here, you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and the most unexpected reversals. And tell me, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. Who knows? Maybe the next story will echo your own experiences. Claire looked at the list one last time. 32 names. 32 mouths that demanded her labor without a thank you. She whispered, "Not this year." Her decision was not yet made, but the seed had been planted. And seeds, once planted, have a way of growing, sometimes into storms. The following morning, Claire's alarm blared at 4:00 a.m. The world outside was silent, still cloaked in darkness, but her kitchen was alive with the glow of the oven light. She moved like a ghost, silent, dutiful, rolling dough, chopping vegetables, setting timers. Her body performed the motions, but her heart was somewhere else entirely. Every clang of a pan felt heavier, like a chain dragging behind her. She stared at the endless list Evelyn had crafted and muttered, 32 people, one pair of hands. The truth was undeniable. This wasn't Thanksgiving. This was unpaid labor disguised as tradition. By 6 a.m., her fingers were blistered. By 8 a.m., her back screamed with every bend. Yet when Mark breezed through the kitchen, showered, smiling, golf bag slung over his shoulder, he acted as though nothing was wrong. "Heading out for the course," he said casually, grabbing a banana from the counter. Claire froze. "Mark, I need help. Just an hour. The pies—" He kissed her cheek absently, not even hearing the desperation in her voice. "It's tradition, Claire. The guys are counting on me. Don't worry, you're amazing. You've got this." And then he was gone. Claire gripped the counter, trembling with rage and disbelief. Amazing. He thought exhaustion was amazing. He thought her silence was strength. Later that day, as Claire pushed a grocery cart overflowing with ingredients, she nearly collided with Mrs. Green, the neighbor from 2 houses down. "Claire, dear, you look pale. Are you all right?" Mrs. Green asked gently. Claire forced a smile. "Just preparing for a big Thanksgiving. 32 people." Mrs. Green's eyes widened. 32? Alone? Claire nodded. The older woman sighed, shaking her head. Honey, that's not help. That's watching someone drown while standing on the dock. The words lodged in Claire's chest like an arrow. She blinked back tears, murmuring a thank you before rushing out of the store. On the drive home, her mind replayed the sentence again and again. Watching someone drown. That was exactly it. Mark wasn't blind. He was a bystander. Evelyn wasn't ignorant. She was the one who tied the weight to Claire's ankles. That evening, Evelyn swept into the house, her perfume sharp, her presence sharper. She scanned the kitchen with hawk-like eyes, lips pursed at every minor imperfection. "The carrots are unevenly cut," she remarked. "And remember, the pumpkin pie crust must be homemade. No shortcuts." Claire tightened her grip on the knife. "I know," she said softly. "And," Evelyn continued, "we must redo the stuffing. Timmy Sanders is allergic to nuts. If he ends up in the hospital, it will reflect poorly on the family." There it was again. Liability, image, reputation. Never care. Never compassion. Claire swallowed hard. "I already made it twice." Evelyn waved her hand dismissively. "Then make it a third time. Some things matter more than your fatigue." Mark entered the kitchen at that moment, patting his mother's shoulder. "Mom's right. We can't risk a scene. Claire, you'll manage. You always do." Claire's eyes burned, but no tears fell. Instead, something else took root, an anger deeper than anything she had felt before. That night, as she rubbed ointment onto her swollen hands, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie Carter, Mark's cousin who had been uninvited. "I heard about the dinner. Aunt Evelyn said I wasn't fit to attend anymore. Claire, I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there to help you. Sometimes I wonder if leaving is the only way to survive this family." Claire stared at the message for a long time. Sophie had been discarded because she no longer fit Evelyn's perfect image. If Evelyn could erase Sophie, what stopped her from erasing Claire? She typed back, "I understand. More than you know." But she didn't hit send. The next day, exhausted and desperate, Claire finally asked Mark again. "Please, I need you. Just this once. I can't do it alone." Mark leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking at her as though she were a machine sputtering out. "Claire, you're overreacting. It's just a dinner. You've always handled it. Why make it dramatic now?" Her throat tightened. "Because it's 37 hours of work against your 1 hour of carving a turkey. Because I am not a machine." He shrugged. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Don't start a fight over something you're good at." Those words, "something you're good at," stabbed deeper than any insult. Cooking until her bones ached wasn't a skill. It was a sentence. By the time night fell, Claire sat alone in the dark kitchen. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Evelyn calling at 11 p.m. Claire didn't answer. Moments later, a voicemail arrived. "Claire, make sure the rolls are gluten-free. The Robinsons are particular. We don't want complaints." She pressed play again, letting the words replay in the quiet house. Not once had Evelyn asked if she was all right. Not once had Mark offered more than empty reassurances. Something inside Claire cracked. She whispered into the darkness, "What if I just didn't?" The thought was dangerous. But for the first time, it felt possible. If you were Claire, standing alone in that kitchen, your hands raw and your spirit crushed, what would you do? Would you keep pushing through, or would you finally walk away? At 2:47 a.m., Claire sat upright in bed, her chest heavy, her mind buzzing. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every word Evelyn and Mark had said. "Don't start a fight. Some things matter more than your fatigue. You always manage." Those words felt like a verdict, one that had sentenced her to a life of endless servitude. She swung her legs off the bed and padded quietly into the kitchen. The half-prepped dishes stared back at her like an accusation. Flour-dusted counters, cooling racks stacked high, a turkey thawing on the counter like a ticking clock. And suddenly, Claire heard her own voice whisper, "What if I just didn't?" The thought, once terrifying, now filled her with a strange electricity. Her laptop sat on the counter, crumbs and flour speckling the keyboard. She opened it, hands trembling. She typed, "Flights out of state near me." The screen blinked. Departures, arrivals, prices. And then she saw it. A 5:30 a.m. flight to Maui. Direct, non-refundable. She froze, heart hammering. Clicking that button would be madness. It would mean walking away from 32 people expecting her to serve them. It would mean defying Evelyn openly, abandoning Mark in front of his family. It would mean freedom. Her fingers hovered. For a moment she hesitated, and then, with a clarity she hadn't felt in years, she pressed Select. The confirmation page appeared. Claire Bennett, party of one. She laughed through the tears that blurred her vision. For the first time in 15 years, she was not someone's wife, not someone's daughter-in-law, not the family's invisible servant. She was just Claire. As she began packing a small suitcase, a new sound drifted into the hallway. Voices, muffled but sharp. She followed it toward the kitchen, realizing Mark was on the phone. "Mom, calm down," Mark whispered urgently. "Yes. She's handling it. Don't worry. I told you she's got it under control." Claire leaned against the wall, listening. Evelyn's voice crackled faintly through the receiver, sharp as a knife. "She better. If something happens with the allergies, we could be sued. I don't want our name dragged through the mud because Claire couldn't handle the responsibility." Not a word about Claire's health. Not a single ounce of gratitude. Only liability. Only image. Mark sighed. "I'll keep an eye on her, Mom. Just relax. Claire was made for this." Claire's hand tightened on the suitcase handle. Made for this. As though she were built in a factory. Something inside her solidified. This wasn't fear anymore. This was resolve. She returned to the kitchen, tore a sheet of paper from the notepad near the fridge, and wrote in neat, steady letters. "Mark." Something came up. "You'll need to handle Thanksgiving dinner. The groceries are in the fridge. Good luck." Claire. She placed the note squarely on the counter, where he would see it first thing in the morning. No apologies, no explanations, just the truth. For a brief moment, Claire sat at the kitchen table, closing her eyes. She let herself picture it. 32 guests arriving, hungry and expectant. Evelyn's polished smile cracking as she realized the food wasn't ready. Mark fumbling, sweating, helpless without her. She imagined the whispers spreading through the house, the chaos, the humiliation. Her lips curved into a smile she barely recognized. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. By 3:17 a.m., she was standing in line at the airport, the fluorescent lights humming above her. Her suitcase was small, her hands still raw, her heart racing. When the boarding call echoed through the terminal, she exhaled for the first time in years. Freedom didn't feel distant anymore. It was boarding gate C12. It was the rustle of boarding passes. It was the quiet triumph of walking away. If you were in Claire's shoes, watching that boarding gate open, would you take the risk? Would you leave behind years of sacrifice to reclaim a single breath of freedom? By the time the sun climbed high over the Bennett estate, the house buzzed with voices and perfume. Cars lined the driveway. Guests carried bottles of wine and pies, ready to compliment Evelyn Bennett on her perfectly orchestrated Thanksgiving. But when Mark shuffled into the kitchen, hair tousled, the only thing waiting for him was a note on the counter. "Mark." Something came up. "You'll need to handle Thanksgiving dinner. The groceries are in the fridge. Good luck." Claire. He read it 3 times, as though the words might rearrange themselves into a joke. But the fridge shelves were bare except for a few half-prepared dishes, and the oven sat cold. His throat tightened. "Mom?" he called weakly. Evelyn appeared, perfectly pressed and pearl-strung. "Where's Claire?" Mark held out the note with trembling hands. Evelyn's face drained of color. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. What followed was nothing short of carnage. Mark tried to wrestle the raw turkey into the oven, slamming the door shut with a bang. He had forgotten to preheat it. Evelyn yanked pots from the cabinets, barking orders like a general in retreat. "Where's the stuffing?" a cousin called from the doorway. "There isn't any yet," Evelyn snapped. Within an hour, the kitchen looked like a war zone. Flour dusted the counters, pots boiled over, smoke alarms screeched. Evelyn's manicured nails broke as she tried to knead dough. And then, the doorbell rang. The guests were here. By 2:30 p.m., the living room was full. Glasses of wine were poured, but the smell of food never wafted in. Laughter dwindled into confusion. "Is everything all right in there?" one uncle asked, peeking toward the kitchen. Little Timmy Sanders tugged his mother's sleeve. "Mom, I'm hungry. When do we eat?" Evelyn's cheeks flushed crimson. "Soon," she lied, wiping sweat from her brow, but "soon" stretched into an hour. And then another. As panic grew, Laura Mitchell, Mark's sister-in-law, slipped into the kitchen. She took one look at the mess and shook her head. "Mark, this is a disaster. Where's Claire?" Mark's jaw tightened. "She left." Laura's eyes widened. Then, with a mixture of disbelief and grim admiration, she whispered, "Good for her." Meanwhile, some of the younger guests began snapping photos of the chaos, a burnt pie on the counter. Evelyn's frantic shouting, Mark's shirt stained with cranberry sauce. Within minutes, the images were posted online. Thanksgiving meltdown at the Bennetts. The family's polished image, so carefully curated, crumbled in real time. And then, as though on cue, Mark's phone buzzed. A new message from Claire. He opened it, and the sound of crashing waves filled the kitchen. The screen showed Claire in a golden sundress, her hair tousled by the Hawaiian breeze. Behind her, the ocean sparkled. She raised a glass to the camera, her smile radiant. "Thanksgiving tastes better with freedom," she said lightly. "Tell Evelyn the turkey is her problem now." Gasps filled the kitchen as Mark accidentally played the video on speaker. Evelyn clutched her pearls, nearly dropping them. The guests erupted in whispers. "Did she just... She's in Hawaii? Good for her." The room buzzed with disbelief and awe. For once, the focus wasn't on Evelyn's control or Mark's charm. It was on Claire, the woman who had finally walked away. Evelyn sank into a chair, her composure shattered. For the first time in her life, she was the object of ridicule, not admiration. Guests whispered about her arrogance, her unreasonable demands. The Sanders family left early, muttering about wasted time. Others followed. By evening, half the house was empty, and the feast remained uncooked. The Bennett's grand Thanksgiving had turned into humiliation on display. As silence settled, Laura stood in the middle of the ruined kitchen, her gaze steady on Mark and Evelyn. "Claire didn't abandon you," she said firmly. "You abandoned her. Every single one of you." Her words cut deeper than any knife. And unlike Evelyn's commands, Laura's voice carried truth. If you were in that living room, watching the mighty Evelyn Bennett crumble under the weight of her own pride, what would you have felt? Anger? Satisfaction? Or maybe, just maybe, a little bit of hope that justice still finds its way. On the shores of Maui, Claire Bennett let the waves kiss her ankles. The salt air filled her lungs, washing away years of suffocation. For the first time in 15 Thanksgivings, she wasn't sweating in a hot kitchen, bending over for Evelyn's approval. She was free. She wandered slowly along the shoreline, each step sinking into the cool sand. The horizon glowed orange and pink, the Pacific swallowing the sun in slow motion. Claire ordered a cocktail and took a long sip, the sweetness and chill bursting across her tongue like a revelation. Around her, couples laughed. Strangers danced barefoot on the sand. A guitarist strummed gently in the background. Claire closed her eyes, letting the music wrap around her like a blanket. For once, she wasn't hearing timers, orders, or criticism. She was hearing herself breathe. Her phone buzzed on the small table beside her. Dozens of missed calls. Mark, Evelyn, relatives, names she had spent years prioritizing. She set the phone face down, her lips curving into the faintest smile. "Not tonight," she whispered to the sea. That night she lay in crisp white sheets, a gentle breeze slipping through the open balcony doors. She listened to the ocean's rhythm instead of a ticking kitchen clock. And for the first time in years, Claire slept soundly, without dreams of burnt pies or Evelyn's voice hovering over her shoulder. Back at the Bennett house, humiliation reigned. Evelyn avoided eye contact with neighbors, her proud walk replaced with hurried glances and lowered eyes. Mark found himself defending the indefensible, fumbling explanations at work and in church. The photos from the Thanksgiving meltdown spread through their community faster than the smell of burnt turkey ever could. Guests posted pictures of the chaotic kitchen, blackened pans, Mark's stained shirt, Evelyn's pearls askew as she tried, and failed, to command order. And when Laura Mitchell confronted them in front of the remaining guests, her words cut like glass. "Claire didn't abandon you. You abandoned her." The room had fallen silent, the weight of her accusation undeniable. Evelyn never forgot the sting of that truth. Neither did Mark. For once, they were forced to look at themselves through the mirror Claire had left behind. 2 weeks later, Claire returned home. Her skin was sun-kissed, her eyes brighter, her back straighter. She moved differently, lighter, as though the Hawaiian air had carved away years of burden. She carried no apology, no guilt, only calm resolve. Mark was waiting in the kitchen, the same place where her breaking point had begun. The counters gleamed, freshly cleaned, as though tidying them could erase what had happened. He opened his mouth to speak, but Claire raised a hand, silencing him with the same quiet authority she had once reserved for rolling dough and balancing trays. "Mark, before you say anything, I need you to hear me." Her voice was steady, unwavering. "I will never cook for 32 people alone again. I will never be treated like a machine, a servant, or a liability. I am your partner, or I am nothing at all." Mark swallowed hard. "Claire, I didn't realize—" "You didn't want to realize," she interrupted. Her eyes locked onto his, firm but not cruel. "I let you believe my silence was agreement. That ends now." At that moment, Evelyn entered, her face pinched, her pearls resting perfectly at her throat as if order could be reasserted by posture alone. She opened her mouth, but Claire met her gaze squarely. "Evelyn, I'm done being your unpaid caterer. If you want to host, you host. If you want perfect pies, you bake them. I will no longer be your silent workhorse. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned." The matriarch's jaw tightened, but no words came. Silence was the only response left to her. The following Thanksgiving looked different. Only 8 people sat around the table, each having brought a dish of their own. The laughter was lighter, freer. The food was simpler: mashed potatoes without truffle oil, pies with imperfect crusts, but the warmth was real. Mark carved the turkey himself, his movements awkward, carving lines jagged but his effort earnest. Claire watched quietly, noticing the beads of sweat on his forehead. This time, they didn't infuriate her. They moved her. He was trying. When Evelyn attempted to criticize the uneven slices, Mark stopped her gently. Mom, Claire is my wife. This is her home too. We will do things differently now. The firmness in his tone startled even him. Evelyn pursed her lips, unwilling to accept the change. Eventually, she excused herself from future gatherings. For her, control was more important than family. For Claire, losing Evelyn's presence was no loss at all. It was a gift. As dessert was served, Mark slid an envelope across the table. Claire opened it carefully, her fingers brushing the edges of the thick paper. Inside was a pair of plane tickets to Maui. No more surprises, he said softly, his eyes earnest. This time, we go together. I don't ever want you to feel invisible again. Claire held the tickets for a moment, her throat tightening, not with resentment, but with something tender, almost fragile. For the first time in years, she believed he meant it. She raised her glass, looking around the modest table at the faces of those who stayed. Not because they needed her labor, but because they loved her presence. Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Respect isn't given by blood, she said. It's earned through love and kindness. The room stilled. For a heartbeat, everyone let the words sink deep. Then smiles spread, glasses clinked, and laughter returned. This Thanksgiving was not about performance. It was about presence, about gratitude that didn't come with strings. And to you, listening now, if you have ever felt like Claire, if you've ever been taken for granted, remember this. Silence is not strength when it costs you your soul. Boundaries are not selfish. They are survival. So tell me, if you were in Claire's place, would you have boarded that plane? Or would you have stayed and kept cooking until you broke? Share your story below, because here, no one suffers alone. And if this tale touched you, if it reminded you of your own sacrifices and silent battles, don't forget to subscribe to Her Betrayal Stories. Here, we honor every untold story of sacrifice, betrayal, and the justice that always, eventually, finds its way home.